Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Gen V Season 1 Episode 2. It is called First Day. So spoilers for the episode as always. Of course we had the big explosive ending to Episode 1 with Golden Boy covering everyone in his rain of blood. I very much appreciated the start of this episode, really focusing on the squelching sounds as the cleanup crew were scooping up his remains. My sense of humor was greatly tickled by that. So yeah, this is very much an episode 2 in that it takes all the characters we met in episode 1 and develops the stories a little bit further. But by the nature of it being episode 2, it's not as big or bombastic, and we're just kind of trying to settle into what the storylines with all these characters are going to be. That said, they all pretty much had something interesting going on. I kind of appreciated that Kate, Golden Boy's girlfriend, feels like she has a bit more this episode. Maybe that's just a case of because he was kind of a one-and-done character, the time that she's going to occupy every episode was kind of taken up by him in the first one. So it was nice that we just get, like, you know, she has a scene on her own, for example, where she makes someone laughing at the memorial site go and hit himself in the balls with a baseball bat. And it was nice to see a little bit of character for her on her own, and felt like, okay, now she felt kind of like she was just Golden Boy's girlfriend in the first episode. Now it kind of feels like she is one of the main characters now. So her and Andre are going to be investigating what happened to Golden Boy. They seem to be concerned and they care about him. They're sad. Everyone else is just, you know, they're making the memorial sites and that, but, you know, people are spray painting murderer on his door. The news are kind of burying him. They're burying his family. We see a report about how the parents have locked themselves in their house, but if they raised such a good boy, why do they have anything to hide? Is this kind of smear campaign that's in the wake? Now we get another cameo from Ashley at the start, complaining to the staff at the university about this happening, about this, how much of a headache this is because she had a bunch of Golden Boy merch ready to go. This is, again, it's another good example of the boys, and I guess Gen V now, doing this thing where it takes a really solid look at the cynicism and the commercialization of things when they're talking about, like, okay, who is there? Who do we promote as the heroes to turn this into a positive story for someone? And they pick Marie's kind of a redemption story. They pick Andre because he's already kind of the popular, like, number 2 on campus. And they're like, well, Jordan Lee's the one that actually fought Golden Boy, and Ashley shoots that down because bigender isn't going to play well with the demographics. And it just is this very harsh, cynical look. And then everything with Marie's story here in this episode about going to the interview and the script she gets all just feeds back into that. But to stick with Andre and Kate for a bit, we get them looking into what's going on. We find out that the thing Golden Boy said to Andre right before he died was that his dad has it, and we meet Andre's dad in this episode. He seems very much like the kind of, you know, similar to Starlight's mum, but in this case it's more of it's nepotism, yeah, but in this case it's more of a, like, he was a superhero as well, and so Andre is going to be a second generation superhero, so this is someone kind of trying to continue their glory days through their son, and he very much cares about doing the press, about doing the interview, about his son being number 1 and having that future. Whereas Andre, as soon as he sees he's ranked number 1, instantly feels guilty about it. And it's something that comes up later on. In fact, one of the things that kind of strengthens both Andre as a character and Kate as a character is that they have like a little one-on-one scene where he realizes he's supposed to go to this interview and he doesn't want to go, and Kate talks him into it and says it's okay if you still want this, right? It's not just because your dad wants it. It's not just, you don't have to feel guilty it's because Golden Boy's dead. Like, you did want to be successful in this realm and you're kind of getting it in a really unfortunate way, but you should pursue it. You shouldn't not do it. Of course, he ends up getting sidetracked before he goes and investigates Clancy Brown's computer because all this talk of the woods and all this talk of what's going on comes up. they find the whole message when he was dying from Golden Boy was that he hid something in the statue of Andre's dad. Turned out it was his phone, and he recorded a video message basically saying, hey, there's this place called The Woods, it's underneath the campus, and they've got my brother Sam. And Sam does turn out to be the guy we saw last episode trying to run away and being put back in. And we also see that the woman who is kind of acting as a sort of counselor now for Marie and is running the crime investigation courses, she is the one running this place. So, you know, she's a total villain. And even if you didn't see any of this stuff, the look she has on her face when she hugs Marie towards the end of the episode would tell you she's a huge villain. Like, there's no doubt that she is awful, and anything she says should be taken with a massive grain of salt. All that's like plot stuff, all that's there. It's a fun little sequence with him sneaking into the office and using his powers to get past the finger scanner. SWAT guys show up, probably the same guys who cleaned out Golden Boy's dorm room, because it's like completely gutted. It looks like no one's ever lived there. And then same here, they come to get the professor's laptop, just in case there's any evidence on it, things like that. But Andre does see something. He does see some security footage of Sam inside the woods, the forest. I feel like they called it the forest last episode, but this episode actually called it the woods. So maybe I'm misremembering last episode, or it's just interchangeable. Because after all, woods and forest are pretty interchangeable. But he basically tries to find this place at the end of the episode. Our big cliffhanger is him seeing these like SWAT team guys that work for this place kill one of the janitors, and he actually even gets caught by a security guard. They've got this like sound device to like make his ears ring so he can't use his powers. Luckily though, Kate shows up and was looking for him and uses her powers on these two security guards, and yeah, it's pretty funny. she makes, so another female security guard shows up and is clearly already being touched by Kate and says, hey, you're going to suck on this flashlight and then I'm going to stick it up your ass. Then Kate touches the back of the male security guard's neck and tells him to do it. So he gets down on his knees and starts sucking on this flashlight as if it is a, well, penis or strap-on or whatever. Take your pick. So this crazy thing is going on in the background as something more serious is happening, which is Andre freaking out that he just saw someone be murdered. And then top of that, Kate starts to have seemingly some kind of seizure because she's been overdoing her powers. It feels like she has to recuperate after she uses her powers, and she's been using them too much between this episode and last episode. So it is interesting to really put some limitations on some of these powers, and I think the idea of her having influence on people, but that taking a lot of strain, kind of to me stands in a little bit for just the pressure of being in the public eye, or the pressure of being someone who people come to for advice or something like that. So you know, it feels like the pressure of those around her, because a lot of the powers like do feel like they're connecting more and more to very specific real life things. Emma, the roommate, her whole thing like is really clearly linked to like eating disorders this episode, and the idea of doing it to look how people expect you or want you to look. In her case, it's, you know, getting little, but in the real world sense, that's, you know, people starving themselves to be skinny because that's what the media wants out of people. So those ideas like were kind of like going through my head a little bit more as I was watching and seeing how these powers play out. So that's the cliffhanger there. But you know, I liked pretty much all the scenes with these characters in this episode. It's actually kind of interesting that in episode 1, Marie's very much this main character, and everyone else is just kind of like relatively douchey college student sort of thing. You know, their friend group's all a bit like that, but this episode did kind of a lot to make them feel more like real characters, more like real people. Especially since, well, not both of them, but Andre tries to ask Marie for help with Golden Boy and says, hey, that was weird what we saw, like I'm concerned that he's dead. And it's kind of try to like bring her into looking into what happened, and Marie shuts him down, and it's not like a horrible thing she says. She's basically just like, I only hung out with you guys once. I don't really know you. I kind of want to just keep my head down and do well, so kind of leave me out of it. And Andre, to his credit, just kind of nods and takes this as well as he can, and that kind of, I felt, did a lot for his character in that moment, because it felt like the way he respected her choice there, I thought actually just said a lot about him in a weird way, which I think is good for him. But yeah, him and Kate teaming up and all their moments together, at least as far as like the long form plot goes, was probably my favorite stuff in this episode. Meanwhile, Emma befriends, we did meet this character last episode, but I barely mentioned her because she was, you know, she wasn't a big deal, but she's like this actress that's in like all the arts classes with Emma. She's actually been in movies, she's done a bunch of things. In the end, she ends up asking to team up with Emma for acting class because they'll have to pair up and do a scene, which actually, before I talk about that, the director character from The Boys is here, and he's here because he showed his dick to someone, some actress or something, and he's in director jail, as the character said, so he's stuck doing acting for auditions at the university. And I loved every second of him being on screen. His character was great in The Boys, and he was making me laugh here. The way he's just like in contempt of the fact that he's here. The creepy thing he does where he's saying, hey, come back and do your scenes. I want to see what clay I have to mold with. But as he says it, he does kind of like a molding thing, but he does it as if he's groping boobs. Like he's like, if we're going with this idea that he's a perv, he's, you know, doing that kind of thing, this just further emphasized it by like implying that he wants to like try and get with a bunch of the college girls. It was giving me all these vibes, and it was like, I don't know, it was very entertaining, and he's a funny character. He's a funny piece of shit. So this girl befriends Emma and says, hey, yeah, that guy you were with has got a history of sleeping with women to try and make himself feel better about his dick and all this stuff. And Emma ends up opening up. And it actually makes sense in the scene why she opens up, because she looks for scenes to do, and she says, oh, these are all the movies that have like a little person that I can play. She's looking for someone that fits them. The girl says, but why'd you have to play a little person? Like, I didn't ask to like do a scene with you so you could do the thing that people know you for. And it was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, the exact problem she had in the last episode, I think her name's Justine, by the way. I was just looking down the cast list to see what this girl's name was. Emma's problem in the last episode was this idea of the fetishization of her being small and that being all people want her to be. And this episode, she's presented with a potential friend who instantly says, I don't want you to get small. I want you to just be what you're comfortable being. Do you even like doing that? Like, she's saying all the right things. Obviously, this girl does come off a little bit of, like, you know, I didn't really trust her. Like, she always felt like there might be something here for Emma not to trust, but you get in the scene why she feels that she can. And she actually tells her about how she gets small and that she hates doing it and she has to vomit. She then does go on her own YouTube channel and tell everyone this. And college students apparently are just awful people because they start making vomit signs at her when she's walking around. But Emma's very upset by this. But it does seem like Justine might feel guilty about it. So I don't know where we're going with Justine as a character. She might end up being a little more layered. She might redeem herself in the eyes of Emma for this. It's hard to say, but at the same time, this was for clout. This was for followers. So I don't know. It seemed pretty obvious a thing that she didn't want to be shared, even though Justine insists that she didn't realize it was a secret. It's hard to believe her, but even after Emma leaves, there's a moment where Justine kind of sighs and says shit, like she feels bad. So I don't know. I'm a little conflicted on that. But she is, when Emma walks in, she's making a girl who has a tail seductively lick her tail like it's a cock. There's a lot of cock stuff in this show. Have you noticed that already? Like, even this episode that doesn't have a scene with a cock in it, I've already had to mention things being used as a cock, like the flashlight, or here the tail, and there was definitely at least one or two other references to dicks in this. This show is dick mad. There's so many dick talk. I'm not against a bit of dick talk. It's just a really unnatural amount for 2 episodes. I feel like I'm really talking about cock a lot. Anywho, so that was the Emma stuff. It was a natural progression for what she's going. I also like that Emma at the start of the episode tries to comfort Marie when Marie gets back to the dorm room, And Marie, much like she shoots down Andre later on in the episode, she shoots down Emma and says, look, you're being really nice, but I just need to like deal with this on my own. And it ends in a kind of a cold note where they both go to bed just kind of with their backs to each other, kind of, and you know, it's a little uncomfortable. It's not very pleasant. It feels like Marie's kind of alienating the people around her who might actually become her friends. But yeah, stuff with Emma's going on is interesting. I'll be curious to see how they kind of progress this more. Elsewhere, of course, we have Marie herself. We have Marie being told she's going to be on this interview. They're turning her into this propaganda machine to be this hero they can promote. She's told she's going to get clothes. They give her a phone. In fact, this social media guy that talks to her also is dropping lots of like really specific sex lines and jokes. At one point it says, oh, you're just like Pretty Woman getting all this stuff, but without paying for anal sex. I guess there was no dick mentioned, but you do use a dick for anal sex, so the dick was implied. Obviously, this is interesting to see her thrown into this deep end, and maybe this idea that she might see how much of a sham this all is, how she's given these things to say. Jordan Lee asks her to tell everyone that they were the one fighting Golden Boy, because they're kind of being buried. Like, they're still on the top 10, but they're like number 5. And it's, yeah, much like we heard Ashley say at the start, they don't want to promote Jordan because they feel it's too problematic a message. It's not going to play well with the audiences, all those things. So Jordan asked Marie to go off script and tell everyone that they were the one fighting Golden Boy. And my initial instinct here is, even though Marie nods, is that she's probably not going to, but it'll probably just depend on whatever like motivating thing happens right before or during the interview. Like, something's going to either motivate her to do what Jordan's asked, which seemingly feels, I think, to the audience as the right thing to do because they are being screwed over here, but probably the other way because it's quite early and we want conflict as far as like writing goes. So that makes sense. She talks to what's the lady's name, who's Indira Shetty is the woman who is running the crime thing, and basically meets Marie to do a bit of therapy with her and talks about her sister, talks about her fears of hurting people. Marie denies a lot of this. I suspect every word of it is pretty much true, although her sister definitely has her main motivation, and that ends up being specifically what kind of inspires her, or at least shell shocks her into just going with the script later on, is that she finds out that the host of the show, from the host of the show, obviously the host of the show didn't do it personally, but she says that we reached out to your sister, and she said, you know, no comment, basically. And Marie's like, wait, I've been looking for my sister, can you give me that email address? And the host says, well, sorry, but she said that she didn't want anything to do with you, so we can't. It does that thing where the sound kind of goes out, and it's like, you know, she's in a vacuum for a moment, kind of in her own thoughts, and then all of a sudden we're in the interview. And again, the cynicism here is when she takes a long time to answer a question, the director of the show, this woman we've been seeing throughout the episode, is like, no, hold on her face, she's either going to crash and burn or become the Black Starlight. I thought that was, again, a really cynical... Because we saw it with Maeve and The Boys, this idea of taking the fact that she was gay and turning it into this very corporate exploitation for cred, like, and advertising and social media. And this is the same thing here. We've got our Black Starlight. It just, you can sort of, the meta narrative of talking about all these things in this way is part of what makes The Boys universe such a fun show to follow, because it is saying a lot about things as it's doing all this stuff. So she ends up just sticking to the script. In fact, I should probably mention at this point as well, earlier on in the photo shoot, where she was very uncomfortable at first, by the end of it, she kind of loosened up and started to genuinely smile whilst doing it. And it's almost like part of Marie's story at this point, to me, feels like she might actually get lost in the dream of what they're selling to her. Now that they're handing her this idea to be on a pedestal, to be the face of this university, to be the one who was there to stop Golden Boy, even though she didn't actually do anything to stop Golden Boy, other than run away, is that she's going to be seduced by all this that's being offered to her. She does show some signs of regret when she goes back to the dorm room at the end, but certainly in the moment, I was thinking, oh, she's going to go along with this, and they're going to keep propping her up, and for at least some of the season, she's probably going to be just into it, and sort of, because she's been in an orphanage, because she's been treated like this, not a monster her whole life, but certainly treated as someone who's dangerous and someone who has to make up for what she's done. Her being given this limelight and treated like a star might actually trick her, might actually work on her for a while, and she might lose herself in it. And I think it's interesting that all of the other characters who I thought were, I wouldn't say unsympathetic, but less sympathetic in episode 1, might end up being the ones who are trying to do, like, fight for good and uncover something bad that's going on. Like, they're ready to, like, move past the bullshit and sort of start really doing something that matters. Whereas Marie, because she's been denied any of this attention her whole life, is probably going to be drawn to it, at least for some time. Or at least tempted by it. You know, maybe we won't go that deep into it. We'll kind of see where it goes. All this stuff is super interesting. I think it is a slower episode again, but like I said last time, The Boys had a couple of seasons where it was slow for 2 or 3 episodes, and then it really kind of kicked into high gear. This, again, still had a couple of great moments of humor and silly moments, some great satire sprinkled throughout. And the big thing, though, is that it sort of took some of these characters that didn't get as much depth in episode 1 and gave them a bit more to flesh them out. So I think the main 5 characters that we're kind of dealing with so far have all, between episode 1 and 2, had enough to make them interesting that I'm curious where their story goes. And that's about, what you could ask for at this point. There was a very mellow version, a cover of Nothing Else Matters at the start, if that's your thing. It was one of those things where the riff started playing. I'm like, wait, I know this. But it didn't click immediately because it was such a different version until the singing started, and I went, oh, it's Metallica, it's Nothing Else Matters. I think this is a very intriguing show, but I will say this, after 2 episodes, it definitely feels like it's in The Boys' world. They've done a good job of making it feel like it's in that same universe. And I suspect some of the same people behind the scenes, some of the same writers are working on it and making sure that is a thing. So, yeah. So I'm in for episode 3 quite happily. I'll get to that as soon as I can in the next couple of days. And then obviously weekly from then on from episode 4. But let me know what you think of episode 2 of Gen V in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. And of course, you can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get some bonuses for your trouble, including an exclusive monthly review of Columbo, which I just started last month. So thank you very much for joining me. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?